Imagine being handed a novel and told this single book takes place over the course of one ordinary day, one city, one Thursday in June. And yet, it has defeated, enchanted, and permanently changed more readers than almost any other work in the English language. That book is Ulysses by James Joyce. Published in 1922, it is widely considered the greatest novel ever written. It is also, famously, one of the most difficult. But here's the secret that nobody tells you. Underneath all the literary fireworks, underneath the wordplay and the stream of consciousness and the dense allusions, there is a deeply human story. A story about loneliness, about longing, about two lost men finding each other in the dark streets of Dublin, and what that means for all of us. Today, we're going to walk through Ulysses together, not in a classroom, not with footnotes, but as a living, breathing story. By the end, you'll understand why this book has spent a century haunting the minds of everyone who dares to open it. Let's begin. The date is June 16, 1904. The city is Dublin, Ireland. And right away, even this fact carries weight. June 16th, Bloomsday, as it's now celebrated around the world, was the date of James Joyce's first outing with Nora Barnacle, the woman he loved for the rest of his life. He chose this day not because anything dramatic happened in history, but because it was his day, ordinary and sacred at once. Joyce structured Ulysses as a modern retelling of Homer's ancient epic, the Odyssey. The original story follows Odysseus, Ulysses in Latin, on his 10-year journey home from the Trojan War. Joyce transplants that mythic framework into a single Dublin day, asking, what if the hero's great journey isn't across oceans and islands, but through the streets of a city? What if the monsters are grief, loneliness, and self-doubt? What if the hero is not a warrior, but a middle-aged Jewish advertising canvasser named Leopold Bloom? The novel opens not with Bloom, but with Stephen Dedalus, a young intellectual who many readers recognize from Joyce's earlier novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Stephen is brilliant, brooding, and broke. He's living in a Martello tower on the outskirts of Dublin with his brash, overbearing friend Buck Mulligan and an English visitor named Haynes. From the very first page, Stephen is already carrying something heavy. His mother died not long ago, and Stephen refused to kneel and pray at her bedside, an act of defiance against the Catholic faith. And now that guilt has bored a hole straight through him. He moves through the morning like a man haunted. When he looks at the sea, he sees his mother's eyes. When Mulligan laughs, he hears something cruel in it. Stephen teaches at a school for a while that morning, has an awkward, revealing conversation with the school's headmaster, a man full of windy opinions and quiet failures, and then wanders off toward the shore and the city. He is Telemachus in the myth, the son searching, without quite knowing it, for a father. He is brilliant enough to know that his life is unraveling, but too proud and too wounded to ask for help. Then everything shifts. We move to 7 Eccles Street, a modest house in the north of Dublin, and we meet Leopold Bloom. Leopold Bloom is one of the most fully realized characters in all of literature. He is kind, curious, and somewhat bumbling. He makes breakfast, feeds the cat, exchanges pleasantries with his neighbors. He thinks about science, about food, about the strange customs of funerals. He is a man of the body and of the everyday, and that is precisely what makes him extraordinary in a world of literature dominated by brooding heroes and tragic geniuses. He is an outsider in his own home, because here is the wound at the center of his life. His wife, Molly, is conducting an affair. Today, this very day, June 16th, her lover, a concert impresario named Blazes Boylan, is coming to visit her at 4 in the afternoon. Bloom knows this. He carries this knowledge around with him all day like a stone in his chest. He doesn't confront it. He doesn't flee. He just keeps moving, keeps thinking, keeps being Leopold Bloom. There is also another grief beneath the first. Bloom and Molly had a son, Rudy, who died 11 days after birth 11 years ago. That loss hollowed something out of their marriage. They have not been intimate since. The affair is almost a symptom of something older and deeper. Two people circling the same wound in silence.
What follows is the bulk of the novel, Bloom's long, wandering day through Dublin. He goes to the funeral of a man named Paddy Dignam, and we watch him think about death with a peculiar, gentle curiosity rather than pious solemnity. He has lunch at a pub. He walks the city streets. He is snubbed, mocked for being Jewish, propositioned, ignored, and occasionally treated with genuine warmth. Throughout it all, Joyce does something revolutionary with the narrative technique. He puts us inside Bloom's mind in real time. We don't just see what Bloom does, we hear how he thinks. One moment he's observing a horse in the street, the next he's connecting it to an advertisement he's working on. The next he's thinking about Molly. The next he's noticing a woman's ankles. The mind moves the way minds actually move, associatively, restlessly, never quite staying still. This technique, stream of consciousness, had never been used with such ambition before. And what it achieves is remarkable. By the end of the day, you feel you know Leopold Bloom better than you know most people in your real life. Meanwhile, Stephen Dedalus has had his own wandering day. He's been drinking, arguing about Shakespeare in a library, philosophizing, getting increasingly detached from the world. He is drowning, slowly, in his own intelligence and grief. As Dublin moves into the late evening, both men begin drifting toward each other. They end up in Nighttown, the red light district, and here the novel enters its most surreal, chaotic section. Joyce writes it as a kind of fever dream play, full of hallucinations and grotesque comedy. Stephen is drunk and belligerent. He gets into a fight and ends up on the street, stunned. And Bloom, good, quiet, patient Bloom, stays with him. He could have left. There's no reason on earth for him to concern himself with this difficult young stranger. But he doesn't leave. He waits. He helps Stephen to his feet. He brings him home, makes him cocoa, talks with him quietly in the back garden under the stars. There's a chapter in Ulysses written as a catechism, a series of questions and answers in the style of a Catholic instruction manual, and it covers this quiet scene between the two men with an almost cosmic formality. What do they talk about? Music, astronomy, their different origins, the things two people talk about when they're circling something they can't quite name. What they're circling is this: Stephen needs a father. Bloom has lost a son. For a few hours in the middle of the night, they are almost that to each other. Stephen eventually leaves. They may never meet again. The connection is real, and it is brief, and that is enough. Bloom goes home. He gets into bed beside Molly. And then, in the final chapter, one of the most celebrated in all of literature, the novel gives us Molly Bloom's voice, completely, uninterrupted. Molly lies in the dark, half asleep, and her mind runs back through her life, her affair with Boylan, her girlhood in Gibraltar, her love for music, her irritations with Bloom, and then, circling back, always circling back, her memories of the day Bloom first proposed to her. On the hill of Howth, among the rhododendrons, she said yes. She said yes to him. The chapter ends with one of the most famous passages in world literature. Molly remembers that moment, the warmth of the sun, the feeling of possibility, and the word yes returns again and again, like a tide coming in. Yes, and yes, and yes. It is an ending that transforms everything that came before it. Molly's yes is not just a romantic memory. It is the human instinct to affirm life, to say yes to love, even knowing it is complicated, imperfect, and shot through with grief.
Ulysses was published over a century ago, and yet it speaks to something that grows more urgent with time. We live in an age of epic distraction, of social media and infinite scroll, and the constant sense that somewhere else, something more important is happening. Ulysses makes the radical argument that nowhere else is more important than here, that the inner life of an ordinary person, their fears, desires, embarrassments, flashes of tenderness, is just as rich and worthy of literature as any king or hero. Bloom navigates anti-Semitism, identity, grief, and marital loneliness with no great dramatic act of resolution. He doesn't save the day. He doesn't get the girl. He simply endures, and he does so with more genuine humanity than most literary heroes manage in far grander circumstances. In an era when so many people feel invisible, overlooked, or quietly struggling, that is not a small thing. The novel also has something profound to say about fathers and sons, about mentorship, about the human need for connection across difference. Bloom and Stephen share almost nothing in background or temperament, and yet they find each other. In a world that often feels impossibly polarized, that quiet midnight encounter in the back garden still feels like something to believe in. And then there's the question of consciousness, of how we actually experience our own lives. Ulysses insists that the messy, wandering, associative nature of thought is not a flaw. It is the texture of what it means to be alive. Every time you catch yourself drifting mid-thought from a grocery list to a childhood memory, to a vague anxiety about the future, that is the stream of consciousness Joyce was writing about. You were living Ulysses without knowing it. At its heart, Ulysses is a book about the heroism of the everyday, about the courage it takes to get up in the morning when you are grieving something, a child, a marriage, a version of yourself you thought you'd be by now, and to keep going anyway, to notice the light on the water, to be kind to a stranger in the middle of the night, to remember when everything feels small that you once said yes. Leopold Bloom does not slay monsters. He does not return to a kingdom. He goes home, he gets into bed, and he sleeps. But by the time we watch him sleep, Joyce has convinced us utterly and permanently that this man's one ordinary day contained more genuine heroism than most epic poems ever dreamed of. That is the gift James Joyce left the world in 1922. A book that insists your life, exactly as it is, with all its mess and longing and small moments of grace, is worthy of the greatest literature ever written. And the only real question Ulysses leaves you with, the one that hums underneath every page, is the same one Molly Bloom answers in the dark at the end of the novel. Will you say yes?